Hey, welcome to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Tim. I upload new videos every week all about running. Today, we're looking at the Adidas Adizero Pro. It's a carbon-plated running shoe. Let's see what it can do in action, and then we'll meet right back here and we'll talk about it in much greater detail. So that was a fun run out at the park. I really enjoyed it. I went just a little over 5 miles on that run. I've got about a little over 12 miles on the shoe in total. So let's start and just talk about some of the stats of the shoe, and then we'll look at the upper, the midsole, as well as that outsole, and all of that good stuff that we talk about when we talk about running shoes. So a US men's size 9 comes in at 8.3 ounces, or the equivalent of 236 grams. A women's size 8 in US comes in at 7.7 ounces, or 218 grams. It has a stack height in the heel of 21.5 millimeters and a stack height in the forefoot of 12 millimeters. So it has an offset, or a drop, of 9.5 millimeters from heel to toe, which was kind of an interesting choice by Adidas there. So let's begin. We'll take a look at that upper. It's called a Celermesh upper, and it's awesome. So it fits really well. It's breathable. You can see right through it. It does feel very cool on foot. It's hot here in Michigan this time of year. And so, I felt really comfortable running in these shoes. My feet have been just really loving it. The tongue, not a big fan of the tongue on this shoe. It's fine. It's kind of a rubberized material. And they've got it semi-gusseted on one side, and it's like completely sewed in on the other side. But what seems to be a challenge for me is when I go to put the shoe on, that tongue, no matter what I do, it just seems to want to bunch up. So it's just a little bit of an inconvenience when I'm putting the shoe on. Otherwise, it's comfortable once I get the shoe on and I'm running and all those kinds of good things. I didn't have any issues that way. It's just initially putting the shoe on has been a bit of a challenge, I guess, as a result of that tongue. Now, taking a look at the eyelet chain, you've got a lot of lacing options. You can see all these holes that are available to you for multiple different ways that you could lace this shoe if you wanted to lace it differently. I chose not to, and I don't run with a runner's knot, so I don't use that top hole anyway. But I just laced it up as it was, basically straight out of the box, and it was fine. But if you wanted to lace it up differently, you've got lots of options to do that. And maybe if you have a narrow foot or a particularly wide foot, that could come in handy. So let's take a look at the collar of the shoe. Now this is a racing shoe. So the collar as well as that heel tab, it's got some pretty minimal amount of padding there. And as well as the heel counter, it's pretty loose. It does have a bit of structure. It's got like a piece of plastic or rubberized material strip that's right up the center of that heel area that gives it some structure. But it's pretty minimal for the most part, but it was more than adequate to do the job. With the insole, it doesn't really have an insole per se because you can't remove it. It's a sock liner that's permanently embedded into the shoe. And that kind of leads me right into the midsole, talking about that. So this is an interesting choice by Adidas in how they put that midsole together. So you've got the sock liner, and then immediately under that, you've got this Carbitex carbon-plated plate, and that sits right underneath that sock liner, above the foam. So oftentimes in racing shoes, at least lately, I've seen that carbon fiber plate either sandwiched in the middle of all that foam or on the bottom of the shoe. So they chose to put it on the top. So you're basically standing on that plate. Looking at the midsole and how it's made up, it's got a couple of different foams. It's got that boost foam in the heel that helps if you're a heel striker. And then it's got their Lightstrike foam that they've introduced just recently. Now this shoe is new this year. It came out available to the public, people like me and you, around mid-May. So it's taken me a little while to get to it. But the Lightstrike foam is a new addition to the Adidas lineup. And I felt like both the cushion in the Boost as well as that Lightstrike was more than adequate for my runs. I did feel pretty comfortable for the most part out there. I will say, since we're starting to talk about performance, or I'm starting to talk about performance, that when I initially put the shoe on and just started walking around before I ever ran in the shoe, it feels flat on foot. And I think that's because the Carbitex plate that they put underneath that sock liner is relatively flat. And, I've become accustomed to shoes that like by Saucony or Hoka that have either like that speed roll technology to help you through your foot strike or the Meta Rocker. These were flat or flatter, I guess, than those. So I didn't notice that right away. And then we'll flip the shoe over and then we'll come back to performance here in just a second. You can see that they've got that Continental rubber, which is very durable. So I think the outsole of the shoe, and I think that that Boost material that might be exposed and that Lightstrike material, I think overall this shoe is going to be pretty durable. And for a carbon plated shoe, if you wanted to use this shoe as a daily trainer, I think you'd be fine to do that. I think you can really rack up the miles on this shoe. So unlike other racing shoes that are very limited in the number of miles that you might be able to put on them, I don't think that's the case here. I think you could really, if you wanted to train in it on a daily basis, you could. So now let's just talk about what it's really like to run in the shoe. Now when I first put it on, I was just walking around the house. It felt really comfortable. Plenty of cushion underneath. But I did have a little bit of difficulty finding my stride with this shoe. And I think it's because of the placement of that carbon fiber plate, that Carbitex. They put it on top of the foam. And so when I said that it felt flat the entire time I was running in it. And I was thinking about it when I was running and why that might be. And I think a part of it could be, or a good analogy would be, is if you put a board on top of maybe a memory foam mattress and stood on it, your weight is pretty equally distributed. You got that bounce, but there's no real bend necessarily to it. So I didn't feel like I was getting a lot of pop or a lot of roll through my foot strikes. So I didn't feel like I was getting a lot of help there. However, if you're a forefoot foot striker, I think that this shoe could work really well for you. When I got up on my forefoot and I was running, I seemed to be able to bend that Carbitex plate a little easier, and it seemed to give me some pop at that point. But I kind of had to do the work to get there. And like I said, I kind of gotten pretty spoiled, I think, in some of the shoe technologies that are out there, where it just helps me roll through my foot strike. I didn't feel like I had to do as much work as I did in this shoe to really get the benefit of that plate. But overall, I felt comfortable in the shoe. It was a pleasure to run in. It took me a little while to kind of figure out how to get the most out of the shoe. And it felt pretty good as a heel striker. So I did adjust my foot strike in a number of different ways to see just exactly how this shoe would feel the best. And so I purposely was heel striking. I was striking on the side of my foot. I moved from a midfoot to a forefoot striker. And you'll see, and I'll put this video clip up, you can see when I was midfoot striking, it's a kind of an odd sensation there at times, kind of like I was slapping the ground. And in the slow-mo footage that you're looking at here, you can see that the toe almost just wobbles. It's kind of interesting. It was almost as if, you just dove off a diving board and that board is still kept its momentum going. And so that was a little bit of a challenge to kind of get used to that, or to figure out how to get around that, I guess is a better way to put it. And I found if I moved from a midfoot more to a forefoot foot strike, it did feel more comfortable, and I did feel like I was getting more of an energy return and more of a pop off the toe. But again, I had to be the one that really kind of initiated that, and I guess I've just gotten accustomed to these easier roll-through technologies that are in shoes today. Overall, I think this shoe, like I said, it could be a race shoe. It's fairly light. It's not the lightest shoe out on the market, but I think it could be a great daily trainer for somebody. For me, it's a little bit heavy for a race shoe, just because I have other options that fit my gait cycle just a little better than this one does. But I don't have any trouble. I wouldn't have any trouble training in this shoe and putting a lot of miles on it, because I think it's going to be pretty durable, especially with all of that Continental rubber that they got covering up the bottom of that outsole. So, hey, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, maybe give it a thumbs up. As always, run tall, run strong, and be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.